Say hello.
Hello everybody! Here we are, we're adjusting the camera.
Yeah.
It's Thursday, it's 2:30 and we are the infant feeding team at the John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford. And this is our infant feeding session. We're going to do about an hour session, just talking about questions and answers, anything that you have that you might think you want to know the answer for. So if you're feeding your baby, it doesn't matter how you're doing it, whether you're giving bottles or you're breastfeeding or whatever you're doing, we would love to hear from you. So anything that is worrying you, concerning you, that you want to tell us how you're progressing, that's what this forum is for. We're not here to answer questions for your scan appointments or your antenatal checks or induction appointments or anything like that. Visiting. We are midwives. We do know most of the answers, but we don't want to give you the wrong one in the times that are changing. So please direct them to another forum. There is Ask the Midwife questions and answer sessions on this forum. I think on a Monday they do that.
Yeah, Wendy's doing one every other week now.
And also you can ask your own midwives about the questions or obstetricians if you have those concerns. So please, just infant feeding questions, it doesn't matter what age your baby is, early days, later feeding, we'd love to.
Or not even here
you.
yet.
Or antenatal, absolutely antenatal.
We had a lot of antenatal questions last week.
Yeah, and I think there's lots of you that are waiting to have your babies that have got a bit more time to sit and watch us talk. So please direct your questions to us, that'd be lovely. I'm Naomi and this is Alex.
Hello.
And we are part of the infant feeding team. So we are now probably about 40 of these in, aren't we?
Yeah, 38, 39 at least, yeah.
So we've been here regularly. I think we've missed one session in the last 40 weeks where we started in April at the beginning of the first lockdown, and boy have we seen some changes in the last 10 or 11 months. It's been quite an eye-opener for all of us, including yourselves that are watching, and incredibly worrying times. But we're here and everybody's doing absolutely brilliantly. Mums are doing absolutely brilliantly in the most difficult circumstances where they are really feeling isolated and struggling to meet people and talk to people and become confident mothers with peer support, which is really difficult. So we are trying to do things to make times better for you, and this is one of the forums that we're doing to try and be more interactive so that you don't feel that you can't get help or support. There is a lot of it around, but it's all very creative. It's not necessarily face-to-face in a lot of the situations, but we are still doing our clinics. We do 2 clinics a week on a Monday and a Thursday by appointment only, and we welcome you calling us if you've got any concerns, if you feel that you have more problems than the normal stuff, that your midwife's not being able to help you with. But also the Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support and the La Leche League and the Baby Cafe, they're all in Oxford and they're all free to use, and they're doing one-to-one Zoom sessions, one-to-one, not face-to-face at the moment. And they're also doing some group sessions as well. There's also lots of other lovely support around for breastfeeding in the communities where people are working creatively but are charging you for it, and they're doing an amazing job as well. So the next thing that we've done is, and we're just about to launch them, and we're not going to win any Oscars, I can assure you for it, is a series of videos which we're about to launch on our infant feeding page on the JR Women's website, the JR Hospital. So we will be putting those up in, I think it's a YouTube format. So it's and there's, I think we're going to do 5 or 7 on the.
Do you want to explain that? 5 or 7.
5 or 7. We haven't decided if we're going to split them up a little bit, or they can, or whether we're going to put 5 videos out and they're a bit longer. But they're just sort of the basic things that we talk about on here every week, like hand expressing, positioning and attachment, skin to skin, relationship building, and what's the other one? How to give your baby bottles and things like that. So, and using
a pump, yeah.
And so we're not going to get any Oscars for it, and it's all very new to us to stand in front of cameras and talk. So we're learning on our feet with this one, but they will be appearing shortly. So have we got any questions?
Yeah, we have. They're coming on through. Absolutely.
Excellent.
So yeah. So, Amina has said, thanks for this. Is there a particular way to transport colostrum to the hospital? I'm about 45 minutes away and it's currently in the freezer. How long does it last once out of the freezer? I don't obviously want to waste it, so don't want to bring too much. And we would say the same, don't bring too much. Absolutely. Because actually the best colostrum, antenatal colostrum situation is that you never ever use it actually, because hopefully your baby will attach and will feed, and then you'll be carrying on expressing if you need to, and you won't ever use your colostrum you've brought. But actually we would recommend that it comes in a freezer bag with free ice blocks, because once defrosted, it needs to be used within 12 hours. And 12 hours goes very quickly. So if you're coming in for an induction of labour, please don't bring it in, or bring us the least amount you possibly can, and we'll hope you don't need it. But we do have a bit of a storage issue in the hospital, and so we would rather you keep it with you. So freezer bag, and invest in a really good freezer bag and some really good ice blocks. Keep it frozen for as long as possible.
Just bring in one syringe or so, and then you've got it in your freezer. If you've got the skill to do that, which you obviously have, if you've got a stash of colostrum in your freezer already, you've obviously got incredibly good skills. You will be able to get milk from your colostrum from your breast in the early days and give your baby it in the same way. You will be using it, it won't get wasted. If you've got colostrum in your freezer at home, you can give it when you get home. But have that as backup for the first night when you get home and your baby's unsettled. It's usually the second night that your baby's been born that your baby sort of grows horns at about 8 o'clock at night, and they don't shrink away until 8 o'clock the next morning, and your baby's awake all night feeding. So you'll be very grateful for that extra little bit of colostrum that's in your freezer at that time. You'll find that very, very helpful. So don't bring too much, and you remember you've got brilliant skills to get the colostrum out when you've had your baby as well. So if you need more, your partner, I know it's 45 minutes you say, but your partner will be able to get some and bring some back if necessary. But you shouldn't need to if you've got that skill. But if you need it, you can bring it in, but only a little bit at a time so you don't waste it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And remember that any expressing you do before you have your baby has no impact on your milk supply. So it's the expressing after you have your baby that secures and establishes your milk supply. So that's why we don't want people to be using lots of their antenatal colostrum in place of actually getting their milk supply going. So it can be a double-edged sword on this one. Fantastic to have it, but we don't want it to impact on your supply afterwards.
You have to keep stimulating. And you don't have to do antenatal harvesting, you don't have to express antenatally to secure a good breastfeeding skill. You don't need to do that to ensure that you get more milk. It doesn't, as Alex has said, doesn't impact it. So if you don't feel that you want to do that before you have your baby, you don't have to. What you're doing is teaching yourself a skill before all the other things are happening in your life, like a baby and being tired and sore after you've had your baby. So, don't feel obliged that you've got to do it to successfully breastfeed afterwards.
And I'm hoping we're not as pixelated for everybody else as we are on my screen, because on my screen we look very pixelated at the moment. So I hope it's not too bad. Alicia has said, first of all, would like to say thank you. It's been extremely helpful. First baby due on the 25th of May. Plan is to breastfeed. However, I would like my husband to feel involved too. Would it confuse the baby going from breast to bottle then back to breast? And also, do you have any recommendations with which type of bottle is better? So many out there. Thank you.
We can't keep up with all the bottles, can we? But actually, there are so many other things that your partner can do other than giving your baby food. So many other things that he can do. Cuddling the baby, settling, changing the nappies, giving you cups of tea, cooking, doing the housework. All of those things, because you'll be exhausted. He can do those in the early days and just support you being there beside you. So don't be in a hurry to introduce a bottle unless it's, you're needing to go back to work very quickly and it's going to need to be done, because it takes about 6 weeks to establish breastfeeding. So you want to make sure that you don't interrupt your supply, and by dropping a breastfeed and giving a bottle, you might well give the wrong messages to your supply in the fact that you would say, actually, I don't need to feed that often. It might interrupt your supply in the early days, and you want to secure that. So It is okay to do it. There aren't any rules, but if you want to breastfeed well, you want to successfully breastfeed for long term, you don't want to interfere with the supply or confuse your baby with flow, because it's all about the flow with babies. And the flow in the bottle comes out in a different way to the breast. It's quite fast from the breast initially, and then it slows down. In a bottle, it's fast all the time. They get milk every mouthful, big amounts of milk all the time, and some babies get very confused by the flow if you're giving bottles and breastfeeding in the early days, and they're expecting the flow to be faster if they get bottles, and it might be one bottle that does it, we don't know. Depends on your baby, and you don't know till you do it as to whether your baby will get very cross at the breast once you've introduced a bottle. So I think you can do it, but and a lot of people will come back to us and say, yes, I do it, it's absolutely fine, but actually, what do you want? If you want to breastfeed and you want to make a good supply, it's probably a good idea to do lots of skin to skin and breastfeeding in the early weeks, and then maybe a little bit later on, 4 to 6 weeks, minimum, to then start to think about whether you introduce a bottle. But your partner can do so many things to help you.
And those mums that do that will often find that they have more milk than they need first thing in the morning, so that they might express first thing in the morning to give the milk for the baby to have that the partner can give later. So that often works.
In the freezer.
Yeah, and that works, or just in the fridge if you're going to give it later in that day. So within a few days, because obviously your milk is fine at room temperature for up to 5 days, not room temperature, in the fridge for up to 5 days. So that is an option that many mothers do use. But I agree with Naomi. I think establish your milk supply, get breastfeeding working, because we see the mothers for whom it's a difficult thing to do. It's a learned skill. Get that established before you introduce bottles. Get that going, and then if that's what you want to be doing, giving bottles, and obviously express breast milk would be the first option. Then that's an option for you going forward. Alicia, see how you get on.
But there aren't any rules, and you do what suits your family. So you make those decisions yourself on how everything's going at the time. Don't be ruled by what other people think.
Virginia's carrying on with the colostrum question. She says, at what point do you recommend starting expressing it? What containers should we use to keep it in, and where do we get them? So when it comes to hand expressing in the antenatal period, we would be thinking about 37 weeks. We don't want you to do it any earlier. There's some great resources out there. La Leche League and Association of Breastfeeding Mothers have got some really good resources out there. And Naomi's just looking at the moment for a little syringe, I think. I'm hoping it's in the found one. Brilliant. So really, to be honest, you can keep it all in, sort of anything small, clean. And we would here in the hospital be using syringes. You could ask your community midwives if they've got any. So this is a 1 ml syringe, so literally all it holds is 1 millilitre. Because colostrum is a food in concentrate, it's tiny, weeny amounts. It's like golden syrup. So as a result, we don't collect it. You are not going to produce it in big volumes, and we don't collect it in big volumes. So that 1 millilitre syringe is probably all you would be using initially. And those can go in the freezer. So that's what mothers do, is they will hand express from 37 weeks onwards. They might do it 4 times a day maximum, and they could use the same syringe depending on how much they're getting, the same syringe for the whole day, and then that goes into the freezer and it stays in the freezer until they need it. So you do 1 syringe per day going forward. If they're getting more, then it might be 2 syringes, but that would be quite rare. Many women don't get much colostrum in the early days. But yeah, it's a thought, and have a look at things like the Leche League and Association of Breastfeeding Mothers. Have some really good information about collecting colostrum when you're pregnant.
You can use a teaspoon, you can use a freezer tray, get one of the little tiny, you can get the little cocktail-y type freezer trays, and they're quite small. Wash it with soapy water, sterilise it, and then you can put it in a freezer bag inside the freezer and just add to the little gaps, and then you can pop it out as you need it. So you don't need to go and get syringes even if you don't want to. Hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, good luck with it, Virginia. Rachel has asked, she wants to know about weaning. She said, thinking about weaning onto solids, do you consider breastfeeding on demand? Yes.
Yeah, we're going to do some sessions, aren't we, Charlie?
Yeah,
We've been asked to do some sessions.
We were asked
on
last week, and when I was doing the one last week, a couple of people saying, please could we do a session on weaning. So, I mean, we're not the experts on weaning, but we can talk to you about what we know about weaning, and actually we could perhaps have a chat with the health visitors as well and see what they're saying.
They're the ones that tend to advise you on your management, but you know, we recommend that you exclusively feed for the first 6 months.
Yeah.
And then around about 6 months, it doesn't have to be 6 months exactly, that's just sort of the approximate recommendations. But we always say that food before one is for fun. So it's them learning about textures and tastes and flavours and picking up and using their fingers to do things. And so you would always give your baby a breastfeed first, and then you would offer a little bit of food before. And you know, your baby should be able to sit up before it can start to wean, and if it's not able to do that, it's not ready to wean, your baby's not ready to wean. They should be able to support themselves sitting, and they should be interested in the food. So if they're watching you and every spoonful that you put in your mouth at the meal tables, then they're probably ready to start playing with food. Beyond 6 months is fine, and you know, it's important that they do introduce different textures because it encourages tongue function, and we know that babies will take on board different flavours if they're given lots of choice at the right time. And we also know that breast milk has different flavours, so the more you give breast milk and the more foods you eat, your baby will get those flavours, so things like garlic and vanilla, and I think they did a thing, didn't they?
They preferred garlic.
Before they preferred the garlic when they gave babies tastes of different milk. One was sort of flavoured, garlicky flavoured, and one was milky vanilla flavoured. They like garlic better.
Babies preferred the garlic.
But the more variable your diet is, the more flavours your baby will experience while they're breastfeeding, the more likely they are to take on board different foods when you're weaning them and be confident tasting different things, because they will be used to all those different flavours from your breast milk. So, but just remember that you always breastfeed your baby before you give solids until about 1, and then after 1, then they start to have food as their main diet, and then they breastfeed. You can breastfeed after the food. So and around it, and in between, and all of the other things, and at night, and keep going. And you know, most babies don't self-wean. Some will, but most babies don't self-wean before their 3rd year. So beyond their 2nd birthday. So it is normal for babies to feed into their 3rd year. That is normal baby behaviour. So, but the 1st year, it's all about the breastfeeding and about the breast milk, and they get that. Or even formula. If you're feeding your baby formula, they get milk first and then they get food.
And it's remembering that with breast milk, it's constantly changing. So it's like when your baby is born, there's a ticking clock in your breast that goes, this baby is 1 day, this baby is 1 month, this baby is 6 months. And the constituents of the breast milk are constantly changing to meet the baby's needs. So we know that around 6 months, there's a real spike in an enzyme called lysozyme, which is an antibacterial agent in the breast milk, which is there all the way through, but it's actually a big spike at 6 months. And that's because the babies are now much more coordinated in getting things and putting them in their mouths, so they're needing that bit more protection with an antibacterial in the, from the breast milk, and they have it in their mouths as well. So it's a really good thing that, this way this breast milk changes to meet the baby's needs, and the profile of the proteins change as well, all the way through, depending on how old your baby is. And your body knows, and it's compensating all the time, thinking this baby needs this and this baby needs that, and it's amazing. And any of you that maybe have had or go on to have a premature baby, your body does that too. Your body goes, this baby is early, we need to put more long chain fatty acids in this milk, because this baby has missed out on the long chain fatty acids that will make a big difference for brain and eye development. So it's amazing. Your body is doing the most incredible job of tailor making your milk for your baby for each stage of their lives. So
the volume doesn't actually go up, does it? From
no, the
about
volume
6
doesn't
weeks,
change.
your volume in your breast doesn't change. So between 6 weeks and 6 months, the amount you give your baby is the same.
Yeah.
But the fats will change. And the other thing is amylase, isn't it?
Yeah.
The baby doesn't have amylase in its digestive system until it's 5.5 months, 5 months old. So it's not ready to digest food because amylase is a digestive enzyme.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually have that present in its tummy until it's about 5+ months old.
So amylase is used for starch, And both Naomi and I are of an era that we were weaning our babies much earlier because that's what we were told to do.
3 months,
Yeah.
12 weeks, can you imagine?
We were giving them baby rice, and baby rice, if you think about it, is starch. And these poor babies, I mean, it must have gone in one end and out the other because they couldn't have made any use of it because they didn't have any amylase.
Bread,
they didn't have anything to break it down. So you know, it is the more we learn about breast milk, the more amazing it is, and then we realise how our bodies, you know, yours and our bodies, have adapted to meet the baby's needs at every stage, whether they're early or you're still feeding at 3 or 4. You know,
so it's learning, aren't we?
It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So anyway, so there you go. That was answering Rachel's weaning question about do you carry on feeding on demand? So yes, and we would call it responsive feeding because, you know, if you want to feed the baby, you have that chance, you know, that have that choice. So we talk about responsive feeding because it's a two-way process, whereas demand feeding sounds like you have no say in the matter. So responsive means you have as much right to offer a feed as for the baby to ask for a feed.
And feeding is very different at 6 months because they're terribly nosy, aren't they? They're on and off. They rub a neck and they pull your nipples to about 5 inches long, don't they?
Don't tell
they're
people
turning
that.
around the corner and looking to see who's coming. It's a terribly exciting time for them. So it is an interesting time in breastfeeding. It's what they do, and it's usually little and often at that age, isn't it? So they're ready to do lots of different things in another phase of their life, and one of them is to introduce texture. So yeah, enjoy it.
Fiona's put up here, and everyone's buttering us up today. They've been really lovely. I've got hello ladies, thank you for these wonderful sessions. Thank you, Fiona. Another colostrum question. I will be finding out in a couple of weeks if I will require a C-section due to a low placenta. If I know that I'm going for a C-section, would you recommend that I harvest colostrum beforehand? I'm a little confused as to what circumstances harvesting is necessary. Is it something that everyone should do? No, not everyone, but it might be a good idea for you. It depends on how you feel after the birth, and having something ready for your baby would be a really good buffer. It would take that pressure off you to get food in your baby in that first hour after birth.
And I think also, as we said a bit earlier, it does give you a new skill, which you know, when you've had a cesarean, you're quite dopey. You might have got a Venflon, you know, a needle in your arm for a drip. You might find that learning a new skill. When you're sort of having medication and you've got stuff going on in your arms to stop you moving your hands very well and handling your baby easily, that learning to hand express is another skill that is quite complex, you know, and learning to use a syringe and collect and having nobody there when you're a bit dopey, it's you know, it's doable, and lots of people do it, absolutely, but it is much easier if you've done a little bit before you go into to have your baby, and even if it means that you just do it as you're waiting to go to your cesarean, you come in that morning and you can sit and learn how to hand express in the morning before you have it. You don't have to do it for weeks before, and as Alex said earlier, it's 37 weeks onwards really. So if you're over that, then you can do it whenever, and maybe 4 times a day if you want to do it.
I think the recommendation is usually 4 times a day.
So, but it is a skill you'll learn. And it isn't a difficult skill, but it's a technique that you've never done before, and it's something that you might not feel so familiar with, in the fact that you're compressing your breasts yourself, and that's quite a strange thing to do. So it is a good thing to do if you feel comfortable doing it, but you absolutely don't have to do it.
So hopefully that's reassured you, Fiona. Nikki's come on and said she's planning on not breastfeeding, and do I bring formula to the hospital with me or quickly make some up before I come in once in labour? No, Nikki, we'll provide you with the formula, so don't worry about that. Whilst you're an inpatient, we will provide formula for you and for your baby. We have 3 different formulas within the hospital, and it's very much a case of which ones are available at that point in time. Just because we stock different makes doesn't mean we endorse them, just to say that all formulas are the same, regardless of how much you spend on it, because they're all regulated by the health authorities and the government, and they have to have the same components in them. So whichever formula you buy or choose to buy, whether you go to one of the supermarkets and buy their own brand, or you go and buy a brand that maybe you've heard of from the television, they will provide the same nutrients and the same constituents for your baby, and your baby will grow just as well.
They wouldn't be allowed to sell them.
No, they wouldn't on any of them. So if you want to save your pennies, you can buy the cheaper brands, and you are not doing your baby a disservice. And even if we don't have the one here in the hospital that you are thinking of using, it doesn't matter if you then go home and moved to another formula. In the past, it's always been thought you can't swap formulas. That's not the case, because actually even the formulas, when you buy them, one tin of a brand formula will be different to the next tin of branded formula that you buy, even if it's the same make, because they are constantly changing, because they have to change what's in them. So,
so the different fats and things that they use, it changes all the time. So you have to make sure that you rather than change a brand, get another tin. It might be that the composition of that tin is slightly different, and it might agree with your baby's tummy. And also we say shake the tin every day. Absolutely. So that you disperse the fat in the powder, because it does settle to the bottom. First Steps Nutrition, isn't it?
A fantastic website.
Which tells you about all the different formulas available in the UK. Tells you what's in them and who they're suitable for. So if you're vegetarian, you can look at vegetarian brands, and then you can look at all the different types of formula that there is in the compositions. So that's First Steps Nutrition. It's on their website, and there is a document for parents that you can look at. The teats that we use are just standard teats like this, hospital teats. So these are the teats that we use in the hospital, and they're very similar to the ones that you get with, if you're buying formulas. But there isn't a set one, and I know we got a question earlier about bottles, which we didn't address.
We didn't answer it, did we? Sorry.
We can't keep up with what bottles are available. I've got to say there are many, many, many. There are some that claim to be closer to breast than others, and that is a bottle, and it's a bottle with a teat. It's not a breast, and it never will be. So do not pay for an expensive one that says it's like a breast, because it's not. They're bottles. So, and they're all absolutely fine for your babies. You have to sometimes get through 3 or 4 different types of teats or bottles to see what your baby's needs are. So one size does not fit all. Babies' mouths are different shapes, and their faces are different shapes, and their sizes and all the other things are different, and they prefer one type to another sometimes. So it is a minefield, I can say that, but we can't recommend any particular bottle because I can't keep up with what's available. There's new ones coming out all the time, and unless I go down the aisles of the supermarkets or pharmacies to look myself, we can't keep up with them. So we normally hear in clinics and things about which bottles work for some mums. Some bottles come with the breast pumps, don't they? Yeah. So that you get a bottle with a teat in the breast pumps. But there isn't any one particular one. You're looking at first newborn teats, and then obviously they will change as the babies get older. And it's the same with milks. It's first milks, isn't it, that you have with formulas. So
all the way to a year. You don't need to swap to any other. You do not need to buy follow-on milk, good night milk,
extra hungry milk.
You don't need to buy any of those. They're all marketing ploys. You're paying their marketing bills when you're doing that. So the first stage formula is the only one you need right up to a year. So whichever one you choose, that will do them right up to the first year, and have all the nutrients the baby needs, and they will grow with that just fine.
And they might be worth normal milk, haven't they?
Yeah, it might be worth doing responsive bottle feeding.
Do, absolutely. So, we talk about paced feeding now, responsive feeding. I don't know if you can see me doing this. I think you can, can't you? So you hold your baby close. The whole point is that it's a positive experience for your baby, and you're limiting the number of people doing this because, one person breastfeeds and your baby gets used to that way. And so if you pass the baby around, which isn't happening very much anyway because there's not many people visiting at the moment unless they're in your bubble, but you choose just 1 or 2 of you to feed your baby, and then they become very familiar with those methods of feeding. And the whole thing is that the baby is sitting up slightly, but they're very close to you, so that they're close in to your body, and they can feel your skin and smell you, and they can see you. And then you hold the bottle slightly. If you tip the bottle right up, you see how it drips. I don't know if you can see that dripping, but it comes out very quickly. So that happens in the baby's mouth, and it can be very overwhelming for the baby if you hold the bottle up. So we talk about having enough milk in the teat to stop the baby from getting air, but as long as there's enough in the front of that teat and there's a bit of air in the back of it, then it's okay. The baby is not getting air if the teat is full. And then you would rub the teat down the baby's top lip and it will gape like that and open its mouth, and then you allow your baby to take the bottle into its mouth and pace the feed itself. So then you hold the bottle horizontally so that there's just enough in that teat, and then the baby can then pace the feed and suckle. So they will suckle, 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 pause, and then they will suckle, suckle, suckle again, and they will take what they want, not what you want them to have. And often babies will be quite panicky if they have it too fast. Their eyebrows will go up and they will squirm quite a lot, and they will take it if you give it to them. So if you pace it, if you are responsive to their needs, they will spit it out when they've had enough, and they'll say, I'm finished. And we do find when we first started doing this several years ago now, isn't it, that babies took a lot less than when we were giving them much more with the bottle up, which is how we used to teach bottle feeding. But actually the bottle should be paced, it should be at your baby's pace, and it shouldn't be full on, and the baby should be able to tell you when it's had enough, and they will spit the teat out when they've had enough to eat. So that's it. And you might want to pause and wind your baby a little bit and then put the teat back in. And sometimes if you alternate the sides, so I know everyone has their dominant hand, but you might find that your baby is happy to have the bottle on both sides. And particularly if you're trying to breastfeed as well, and you're giving your baby's bottles with breastfeeding, you might find that it's easier if you swap sides when you're feeding, that your baby is more comfortable going to either side of your breast. Sometimes if you're just using one side, they're not confident going on to the opposite side because it feels different. So if you're doing a bit of both, it might be a good idea anyway just to swap sides when you're breastfeeding as well.
Okay, Nikki, that was a long answer for you. Covered it all. So upshot of all of that was, no, you don't need to bring your formula in. We will provide you with formula. Obviously, the ideal situation would be you have your baby in skin to skin when your baby is first born, and regardless of method of feeding, you feed your baby in skin to skin, because that's what the baby will want, and that will be lovely for both of you. So even if you are choosing to bottle feed right from the beginning, it would be lovely to have that first feed in skin to skin, because that's just
where they expect to be.
Yeah, exactly, it's perfect, and it helps that baby adjust to life having been born. And obviously you've gone through responsible bottle feeding, and you only need first stage formula right up to the first year, and anybody who's introducing formula later, that's exactly the same for you, and all the formulas are the same. So you can buy the cheapest formula on the market, and you will not be doing your baby a disservice. You will not be, being a bad parent at all. You will be being a very good parent, because you'll be saving yourself a bit of money. Right, moving on. Emmy has said, hello, my baby's 13 days old and exclusively breastfed. She feeds every 2 hours throughout the day. She always falls asleep at the breast, but within 10 minutes she's ready to feed again from the other breast, and does this at every feed. Every night from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. she just wants to feed constantly with no break. Again she falls asleep at the breast, but as soon as she comes off she starts screaming to be fed. Is this normal? I think we need to know what's happening with your poos and wees actually on that one.
I think babies have their clock completely the wrong way around on day 13. They're still very nocturnal, and they do enjoy being with you, and it's much quieter, so maybe there's less distractions going on and you're more aware of your baby. If you're busier, you can sort of probably get up and do something with your baby if it's not quite settled, but in the middle of the night when you're tired, it feels very endless, doesn't it? It sounds like it is quite a normal thing for a baby to do, to be awake at night more than in the daytime on day 13, but as Alex said, is your baby behaving appropriately? So is it peeing and pooing and gaining weight? Yeah. Those are the reliable things that we know that there is enough milk going into your baby. And if the answer is yes, then it's just a question of have you got your latch deep enough? Is your baby attached at the breast and getting the right mix of milk when it's breastfeeding in order to fill it up? Some babies do settle for a few minutes and then wake up and want the other side afterwards. So it's just having a pause. But if it's a problem and it's endless, then talk to your midwife and or OBS. They may well want to watch you latch your baby, get somebody to help you with your latch, just to make sure that it is absolutely right, so that it is makes it a positive experience for you.
Yes, at day 13, I suppose the question is, are you still seeing your midwives? Is your baby already at birth weight? If your baby's not at birth weight, then make sure you're getting a lot of support. And if your baby's already at birth weight, then I think agree OBS. We'll try and get some help from there, and or us.
Millimetres, it's never inches, it's always millimetres. It's just a little tweak.
We've just done breastfeeding clinic. We've been downstairs working a breastfeeding clinic this morning, and that's what we do. The first thing we look at is positioning and attachment, and even mothers who are doing a really good job, we can always improve positioning and attachment and make it better for the baby. So,
always, there's room for improvement.
So it may be, and it's amazing. I was chatting to this lovely mum this morning who's doing a great job. And I just said to her, I know it sounds ridiculous that I'm talking about a millimetre here or there, but it makes such a difference to the mouthful the baby gets. So it might be that someone needs to just have a look at how you're getting on. And you may have already had lots of people looking, but it would be well worth contacting her.
Look at how to position your baby. It's got some great videos on how to get a really good latch, and that might help you as well, just to look at what you're doing. And also we talk a lot about the angle of the dangle on these video sessions, don't we?
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes if your breasts are downwards facing and your baby's tummy to mummy, which is not the way we recommend, you're looking at the way that your baby is coming onto the breast.
Go side on.
So if your breast is up there, your baby should be here, but if your breast is downward facing, you should be turning your baby and coming up from underneath the breast, and that will allow your baby to get a bigger mouthful and be more stable on the breast. And you might find then that your baby gets a little bit more milk and is more settled. The other thing you can do is some compression. So when your baby is coming to the end of the feed, you can compress your breasts and hold. So when your baby suckles, you compress, and then you let go when your baby stops suckling. And that pushes milk in from deep within the breast, and that will give your baby an extra hit. But it will also stimulate more letdown, so your baby will get, you might find that it suckles sort of very gently and then suddenly starts glugging again, and that's another letdown, so your baby's getting another rush of milk. And the compressions will encourage that, but it will also give your baby a little bit more food, and that might just get you through a little bit longer and your baby not waking up so much. But I think positioning and attachment first, and then looking at just changing the technique slightly might improve your baby's breastfeeding.
Okay, hopefully that helped. Just checking, I'm missing, I have to scoot it down to see how many more messages we've got, so I'm just gauging time we've got. Right, okay, so that was answering Emmy, wasn't it? So, Sophie has said, will they help you in hospital with breastfeeding? Oh yes, they will. Definitely. Yes, there will be plenty of support for you with breastfeeding. When you've just had your baby, you'll be helped. If you're wherever you are, whether it's on the spas or on delivery suite, they will help you with feeding. And then when you get put onto one of the wards, whether it's level 7 or it's on level 5, again you will have help with feeding. And if it's deemed that you need our support, we will get rolled in. We get asked to come and see you. But actually, in a way, you have to really hope that you don't meet us, because unless we're doing just the teaching on the wards, if we're asked to come and see you, it's because you're having slightly more complex problems. So our staff are all really well trained. We've been training them for years and years and years. The midwives that we have all been through BFI training, so which is the Baby Friendly Initiative training, which is a particular standard of training, which is really good. So yes, Sophie, you will get support. However, I will say, ask for it. If you are, don't wait and don't think, oh, the midwives are too busy, they can't come and help me. They want you to buzz. They need you to tell them when you're ready to feed. So if you're sitting in your bay and thinking, I'm struggling here, just press your buzzer and get someone to come and give you a hand. That's what they're there to do. The midwives and the MSWs will be very, very happy to help you. Much happier to help you than leave you struggling on your own. So do ask for their help.
And actually, if they don't know you're struggling because you haven't asked for help, they're not going to come round all the time and say, are you okay, can we help you with feeding, because there's a lot going on. But if you need help, they will be there to help you.
Please.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're about as well. We're coming onto the wards and chatting every day to the mums about the positioning and attachment and things. So but there's lots of people around that will support you. But if you don't ask, they won't know. And so rather than saying that you didn't get help, make sure you ask for help, and they will help you.
Yeah.
And don't think that you're going to bother them, because you're not. We'd be unemployed if you weren't here. So remember that. That's why we're here. We're here to help you.
And also, I mean, the staff actually pretty much to everyone absolutely love helping mothers get breastfeeding off to a good start. So they'd much rather be helping you with feeding than doing many of the other things that they may have to do. But so just do ask for the help. And it might be that they oversee you getting your baby on, and they leave you feeding, and then they come back and find out how it went afterwards. So it's the getting on's the important bit. I think we've got building work going on.
I think the other thing to say is that your babies don't always feed in the first 24 to 48 hours, and people get really demoralised by this, and we see it all the time that women get very upset that their babies aren't suckling on day 1 and day 2, but it's not unusual for babies that have had long labours or very quick labours even, or medicated births, that they're very, very sleepy. And they don't play out the behaviour that you'd expect on a baby that you're used to in your head expecting, which is a baby that wakes up and cries every couple of hours, or wakes up and stirs and starts rooting. And not every baby does that in the initial time. They can be quite sleepy. And so you have to make them have those opportunities to feed. But also, we talk a lot on the wards about protecting your milk supply, and it's very frustrating for a lot of mums that they don't get help to breastfeed. But actually, we always say we can help you if you've got milk, but if you don't have milk and your baby's not feeding, it makes life really, really difficult.
Yeah.
So if you go home and you've got milk coming, you can feed your baby, and then we can take care of the positioning and attachment. But if you can't stimulate your breasts enough, or you haven't stimulated your breasts enough, the milk supply doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So you will get a lot of protect your milk supply, hand express, skin to skin. Hand express, skin to skin. Give your baby all the little drops, and it might be that you just get tiny little drops. So this is 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, etc., and that goes up to 1 mil. So 0.1 mil on day 0 and day 1 is a normal amount to express of colostrum. We don't expect you to get half a litre when you're hand expressing on day 0 and day 1. It's tiny, tiny, tiny amounts. And each time you do it, you give your baby that golden syrup. It's absolutely full of packed with calories and fat, and antibacterial, antiviral, all of those things that protect your baby and keep your baby's blood sugar levels going. And tiny bits all the time. And the more you do it, it's not the amount, it's the number of stimulations that matter in milk production. So hand express every hour if you need to. If you're worried about your baby not waking up and feeding, just hand express and give it 0.1, 0.2 mils of colostrum. You'll improve your technique, you'll get food out, and you'll stimulate your breast to produce milk when they're ready to produce it. And then you've got a win-win situation. If you put your baby in the cot and wrap it up and you're sitting chatting on the phone, your baby is not going to wake up and have its cues to feed. You need to have your baby skin to skin, which will also increase your milk production, but it will also prime your baby to feed. It will stimulate your baby to wake up and play out its normal behaviours. And if your baby's not able to do that because it's wrapped up in a cot all warm and hot in a hospital bed, in the hospital ward, it gets really warm, they often won't wake up. So you have to do that for them. Keep them close to you, keep them skin to skin, have them skin to skin while you're hand expressing, and then you will find that your baby will be more responsive to you and much more likely to learn to breastfeed early than if you pop it in a cot and sleep. So you must be proactive as a mum to make that food. You must be proactive. You must be proactive to give your baby colostrum, express colostrum, or to stimulate behaviour for breast seeking. And that is having your baby close to you all the time. That's where they expect to be when they're first born. And the more you do it, the more milk you will produce. And the sad thing is that if that time goes and you don't do it, you don't get that time back. And that's the important thing, is that you know that you've got to do it. You've got to do it yesterday, not tomorrow. It's got to be done. And when you're sore and tired and you just want to sleep and you've had 2 nights in labour, the last thing you want to do is to be with your baby and feed it all the time, because you're tired, you're really tired, and your baby's very tired and not responding. But that can happen later. You've got to get that order in to make the milk. It's so important.
Yeah, it's that whole thing about making your milk supply is time critical, whereas babies have time to learn how to breastfeed. And we can have, we've been in breastfeeding clinic, and we have babies, up to 6 weeks old. And sometimes when they come and see us and they're 6 weeks, that might be the first time they've breastfed.
Yeah.
But because the mother has worked on the milk supply, she's done the most important thing, because that baby now has the reward of learning how to breastfeed, because it goes to the breast and it gets a lovely big mouthful of milk, because that mother has done such a great job at expressing her milk. So it's thinking about the milk supply. If you're struggling, the milk supply has to come first before trying to get the baby to feed, because the baby can learn to feed later. I think that's our key
I
message,
think one
isn't
of the first things that people say when they come in and they don't have enough milk is, I wish somebody had told me to do it.
Yeah.
So we're telling you to do it, and we tell you on the ward every day, but you're tired and you often don't hear it, and you think, I'll do it tomorrow, I'm too busy today, I'll do it tomorrow, I'm too tired today, I'll do it tomorrow, I haven't got time to do it today, I'm busy with my baby. You have to do it. And that's, as Alex said, it's time critical. The window will shut, and then you're devastated, and then you'll say, I wish I'd done it, and you can't get that time back. So, do it, and then think about things later. We can talk a little bit about hand expressing, couldn't we, and do some hand expressing with you.
Yeah, we've got a few questions lined up. So
Okay.
just going to finish with Sophie and just say, I think just to finish and to everybody else that's listening, obviously for the majority of you out there, your baby will go to the breast and feed, and there will be no problem.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that, because unfortunately, obviously we see a skewed view. We see a lot of people who are having problems.
We hope we don't see any of you.
Sadly, the ones who do well, in fact this is the closest we get to you,
Yeah.
the ones that are doing well. So often all we see are the ones who are struggling.
Yeah.
So we know how heartbreaking it is when you've got a baby that will go to the breast, that the mother then doesn't have enough milk. And that's why we go on and on and on about it, because what we want is that should you be that one that does have a problem, that you're not the one who doesn't have enough milk when your baby finally works out what to do. So it's making sure you have that supply.
Get everything in place.
Yeah,
So
because
that
you
when
have
you
options.
when you can breastfeed, your baby will go to the breast really happily. They're driven by flow,
Yeah.
and if the flow's not there, they will shut their mouth and they'll shut their eyes and they will say, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
It's not for me.
So it doesn't
you'll
work
think-
for me.
And you'll say, well, my baby doesn't like me. My baby doesn't like my breasts. My baby doesn't like my milk. And it's not that. It's the fact that the flow is low. And you have to get the flow high so that baby gets that really big hit in its mouth so it'll go back for more. And so, it's getting that in place, and then your baby will do anything. It will do it. But, we can't say it enough in enough languages and enough ways, because that's all you have to do. And, today I sent someone home and said, you've just got to pump. It's really, really miserable, but to make milk, you've got to do it. And you work really hard and you get payback, but it works.
And then we had the situation a couple of weeks ago where a baby went to the breast for the first time at 10 weeks. Had never, just would not feed, and at 10 weeks it decided it would have a go, and it would do it. So it's just remembering, because that mother had kept her milk supply going, it was worth it, because that baby then got that reward, and the baby goes, oh, that's what it's all about, I would rather like to do it.
And somebody who's at 9 months as well, they've given their babies bottles at 9 months for 9 months of express breast milk, and at 9 months she
Gosh,
called
that's
us.
hard work.
She called us and she said, my baby had its first breastfeed this morning,
Yeah.
and that was 9 months later.
I wish that not on any of you.
No, but they do it when they're ready, but not usually that. Look, that is very, very unusual.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is that we do say that, and we tell the staff on the ward, so the help that you get, they may come to help you and say express and skin to skin, hand express and skin to skin, and that you might feel that they're not helping you, but if your baby's not ready to feed, it won't feed. And if they're sleepy and they're not waking up to feed, you've got to have them on your skin, and you've got to protect your milk supply. Hand express with them skin to skin, and your milk will start to flow more, your colostrum will come more easily, and you will be stimulating your breasts, and it will start to produce the prolactin in your brain that stimulates more milk production, and then it's easy for you.
Right, let's go and crack on with some others. So I hope we've reassured you, Sophie, that yes, you will
get
get
help.
support, and anybody else who's listening, you will be helped. Okay, we promise. Amy has said, last week you mentioned something about vitamin D supplements. Will baby get this from the vitamins that I'll be taking, or do they need their own? If so, what supplements would you recommend? Amy, we do recommend that if your baby is exclusively breastfed, that you are giving vitamin D supplements to your baby, as well as taking it yourself. The reason for this is that we live in the Northern Hemisphere. We tend to have, especially at this time of year, we don't get out in the daylight very much. We don't process that vitamin D through our skin. And as a nation, and particularly those of any darker skins who live in cities, they're less likely to have enough vitamin D for themselves, let alone for their baby. So the recommendation is that you should be taking vitamin D and your baby should be taking vitamin D. So I'm not going to give you a particular name.
Pharmacist will recommend what's right for you.
And it will be droplets that you can put on the nipple or straight into your baby's mouth. So it's just drops that you will give your baby every day. Anybody who is mixed feeding, so giving formula as well as their breast milk, if they're giving more than 500 mils of formula a day, then actually that's fine. They don't need to do it because that's already fortified with vitamin D. So exclusively breastfed or anyone who's
50% of your feeds are formula.
Then you would need to be supplementing. But it's not that we are deficient in giving it to our babies. It's because we are ourselves deficient and therefore don't have enough for us and our babies.
But also, in COVID we aren't going out so much. We are really isolating a lot, so we're not getting out as much as we might have done previously. So, even more reason to give yourself and your baby's vitamin D at this time.
Well, I've heard from Claire as our next one. Claire's been on before, Claire Bunyan. We've heard from her quite a few times in the past. Hello, Claire. And she's answering Rachel. She said she wishes there was better information on the weaning. I'm introducing solids to my 7-month-old exclusively breastfed baby and have been breastfeeding him before offering solids. 30 mils to an hour before, on this basis that his nutrition still comes from the milk, perfect, rather than the spoons of mashed carrots that he occasionally agrees to eat. Love it.
Comes in and out, doesn't it?
Very interested to hear more about what we should be doing. I'm totally winging it currently, and I think that's just fine, Claire.
I think
winging
we all
it
do.
Is fine.
I think that's what mums do. They wing it with their baby because you don't know what your baby's going to like until you try.
No.
So what your friend does might not work for you.
And a lot of people, certainly my sister did a lot of baby-led weaning. Well, that really wasn't around when we had our babies. But actually, it's lovely. I thoroughly enjoyed seeing my nephew and niece doing baby-led weaning. It's not for those who are faint-hearted about having a bit of a mess in their house. So I can think of people in my family that wouldn't have had it. But my sister was brilliant at it and facilitating it for their babies. Then that allows the baby to use their hand-eye coordination and to pick things up at their choice. And you just put a few things out in front of them and they start putting it in. And it's quite obvious when they've managed it because you can see it in their nappies. Because the nappies start to change, so it's quite fun. So it's from 6 months onwards they can really start coping with lumpy bits already and don't need purees as such.
Yeah, mouli is probably better than a puree. If anyone knows what a mouli is, it's sort of semi-done if babies are struggling a little bit. But La Leche do really great weaning sessions, and I'm assuming they'll do them online still. And the Oxford Breastfeeding Support, they will probably have discussions at times in their group sessions that they're doing, even on Zoom. So and also your health visitors are around for support as well if you've got individual questions that you need to get support from about specific things or worries that you've got. They're very good at doing it, and they've got nursery nurses in the community that are absolutely, that's what they do. They talk about weaning and sleep and all of those things, and they do sessions with mums. So you can't go in and have face-to-face sessions, which is what they probably did in the past, but they will be able to support you.
And as we said, we will try and put a session on soon. We've got quite a lot going on at the minute, but we will do it, we promise. Jessica's come on with her daughter is 10 weeks old. We're waiting for a referral to the allergy clinic, assuming it's a milk protein allergy, so have been dairy free since last Monday. Before that I was lactose free. She's very unsettled if not being held, stood up, or when laid down, which has to be raised. She struggles to breathe for a while, thinking it's reflux. She has been too much, not sure. Quite sure what that was. Coming out Oh, she's had baby acne, that's what she's saying. Two, not sure if it's the dairy coming out still or something else. She's quite fussy on the breast, however, she's gaining weight well, brilliant. Is this all normal with a dairy allergy? Today I've tried to give her a dummy to help with the crying and the wind, however, I'm worried she'll get nipple confusion. The only way I can stop her crying is to put her on the boob, so worried I'm making it worse if feeding when not hungry.
How old is she?
10 weeks.
10 weeks old. Oh, that's a real struggle for you, isn't it? That's a real journey. I'm glad she's gaining weight, because often when they get cow's milk protein allergy, which I'm assuming that's what you mean, they can be quite small. Babies aren't gaining weight easily, and so one of the worries for mums is that they're not gaining enough weight, and they start to do that once you take away the cow's milk protein from the diet. I think with breast milk, it comes out of the milk quite quickly, but it takes a little while to come out of your baby's digestion, so for their gut to recover once they've been getting
a couple of weeks,
protein.
they reckon, don't they?
Yeah, a couple of weeks. So I think that's why they say take yourself off a cow's milk protein diet and be careful for a couple of weeks. But actually, within about 24 hours, the cow's milk protein is out of your breast milk, but your baby takes a lot longer to recover from it in its gut. So they have the symptoms there still. I didn't quite get it all in one go, but was there an improvement after she'd stopped having the cow's milk? It might be worth you talking to us on the phone.
Yeah, just to say she was lactose free. Well, that's different because lactose is the sugar, and it's the allergy, the protein. The allergy is to the protein when you have it.
Babies are very rarely allergic to lactose because there's such a lot of it in breast milk, so they're usually quite poorly if they're lactose intolerant. So it's normally a bit later on that babies develop it. But certainly cow's milk protein is something that babies do get.
So I think part of the question was that you've been offering a dummy, haven't you? And you were worried if that was going to cause a problem. I think if that buys you a few minutes, then that isn't such a big thing. But also it's never wrong to breastfeed, to be honest. Because babies, exactly. Babies will feed for so many reasons. That if you think about it, why do we have dummies? We have dummies because mums don't want to have their breasts and their baby all the time because breasts came first. So your dummy is a breast replacement. If you're happy feeding your baby and keeping your baby in that position, then that's that's an option for you. Whether your baby's hungry or not, babies will feed for comfort, and that's not a problem. That's not a bad thing to feed for comfort. We get it. When people mention it to us, they talk about it in a negative way, but actually that's a lot of what breastfeeding is comfort. So you've obviously been off dairy now for a whole week, so
I think you don't want to miss feeds, and that's one of the risks if you have a dummy that babies miss cues and they don't ask for as much food. So it can drop your milk supply, but also the babies might not gain as much weight. So keep an eye on the wheeze and poos, and you've got your baby 10 weeks now, so you're very familiar with your baby and very experienced mother. But it's very draining what you're going through. So if you want to talk through a few things with us on the phone, we'd be happy to talk to you personally, just to get a better picture of what's happening. It's quite hard to discuss it generally on this forum.
I think Jessica might just put another one up. Seems to be getting worse with the unsettledness. Okay.
I think give us a ring.
Yeah, let's have a chat with you.
We'd be happy to chat with you, Jessica, if that would help. And we can just go through a few things and just get a really clear picture of what's happening. If that will help you, we'd be delighted.
Yeah.
Our number is 01865 572 950. So that's 01865 572 950. And do give us a call, Jessica, and we can hopefully talk you through a few things if it will help you. We're here 7 days a week, so it doesn't have to be today.
No. Right, good luck with that then, Jessica. Catherine, 40 weeks today with a lovely smiley face. After having bad mastitis, which I had to go on a drip with my first, I decided to formula feed when baby arrives. What advice can you give to avoid that from the first day? And should mastitis symptoms appear, how easy is it with the pandemic to get prescribed antibiotics? They're very, very easy. All you need to do is phone your GP up, and they'll normally have them sent to a pharmacy for you to pick them up. And the first line of care when you have mastitis is to use any form of anti-inflammatory. So we would always say, ibuprofen or something like that if you can take it.
If you can't. Yeah.
and a combination of the two is very good as well, because paracetamol will make you feel better, ibuprofen will bring the inflammation down. Obviously, your milk will come in on somewhere between days 3 and 5, and the idea would be, if you're not going to be offering the breast, that you don't stimulate. So you just try and keep the breast comfortable, and you use some form of anti-inflammatory to bring the
a supportive bra,
yeah.
so that you're not overstimulating your breasts. Keep them quite firmly in a bra, and that does help with suppression.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling very full, then a warm shower and anti-inflammatories will help. And talk to your midwife if you're worried about anything.
Yeah. Good luck with that, Catherine. Let's hope you avoid it this time. It's not nice,
It's not
I know.
nice.
Charlotte is saying hello. She hasn't been here from. It's lovely to hear. We hear from her every week. She says, "Hi, ladies. Hope you're both well and keep safe." She says her daughter Alicia says hi. She's nearly 9 months old now, and she's 6 teeth on top and 6 on the bottom. Every time you write, she's got more.
Yeah.
Growing up so fast, she's my world, and I wouldn't change her for the world. I bet you wouldn't. I bet she's absolutely gorgeous. Nikki's come back and said thank you. She was the lady asking about formulas. Hannah has said, "Hi ladies, what are your thoughts on pregnant women having the COVID-19 vaccine?" I would highly recommend you have a look at Brenda Kelly. She did a Facebook Live on Monday, and she did a whole session on COVID-19 vaccines.
It was 12 till 12:30 on Monday she
Yeah.
did it, so that's on the OMVP website again.
Yeah, so if you look at the website that you were already looking at on Facebook, you'll be able to find, or the page, you'll be able to find her presentation. It was Brenda Kelly, it was Monday, and she did a whole thing about pregnancy and lactation, and whether what we know and what the recommendations are. So have a good look at that, and that will answer those questions. And anybody else who's got any concerns, I would highly recommend that you go and have a look at what she said. She's got the most up-to-date information. Obviously the situation is constantly changing, but at that she does have the most up-to-date information. Kelsey said, "I've got lots of childcare experience from a professional background, but no experience from a mother background. So I'm used to using formula milk, and I'm confident in knowing what I'm doing. Whereas breastfeeding is not something I have." I got to finish opening all the experience with, and it scares me so much. I'm feeling so overwhelmed. I want to try to breastfeed as I know it's best for my baby, but honestly I don't know if it's worth it due to the stress, emotional toll it's having on me, as that will then in effect affect her as well. I know breastfeeding is meant to be best, but honestly I don't know if I can do it. The thought of it really causes me so much worry. You haven't mentioned, Kelsey, how many weeks pregnant you are. But we would be more than delighted to have a conversation with you. We talked today, and we talked through all her concerns, and I provided her with the information, and we're all doing that. Whoever's around would be happy to do that. So maybe make contact with us, Kelsey. We can have a chat, find out what your particular concerns are, and hopefully we can reassure you. Because obviously breastfeeding works for so many women. There are so many women out there who do such an amazing job, and there's no reason why you wouldn't either. So
you don't have to make a decision until you have your baby in your arms.
Absolutely don't have to make any decision.
When your baby's in your arms, you have oxytocin flowing, and you have your baby skin to skin. You can make a decision then. But do talk to us. But there's no pressure to make a decision and tell anyone what you're going to do until you decide. So please don't get stressed about it. No. Just let those hormones flow, and think lovely baby thoughts and not be too worried about it. But we can have a little chat with you, absolutely. But don't make a decision.
Yeah.
Just leave it open and wait until you've got your baby in your arms.
And remember, there's 2 of you, because sometimes babies are so proficient at what they do that actually you may not have to do anything, and your baby might do it all for you, and then that's taken that off your hands in that respect. But I would say give us a shout and let's have a conversation on the phone.
But it's funny because most women say that they don't ever think that breastfeeding is going to be difficult or a problem, and they're shocked when they have their baby and they find it the hardest thing.
Yeah.
And that's many women find out that way round. So you're not alone in all these anxieties that you have, but most women don't come from it from that way. They just expect that it's going to happen, and they need lots of help. So everybody comes to breastfeeding in a different way, but you don't have to make that decision. Just go with it, and when you've got your baby on your tummy post delivery, then you can make that decision between you.
Yeah. Rose has said she's having a booking appointment by phone and understands ordinarily this is the time certain tests such as blood tests are carried out. When will these be taking place? Have a chat with your community midwife. They'll let you know when they're doing that. They won't be missed because they're absolutely crucial. They will be done. So if they're not being done, at the time of booking, and I know a lot of booking appointments have been done over the telephone, there will be a plan in place to take your bloods. So don't worry about that. That all those things that we know.
We don't know is the answer either. We don't do them.
I haven't done a booking for a very, very long time, so I'm not quite sure. Although I sit in the community midwives meetings, I haven't actually heard when those bloods are being taken. But there will be a plan in place, Rose. Contact your community midwives and ask them, or wait until you have your telephone call, because they will have a plan in place to have that organised. It won't be ignored, I can assure you. We need that information. Emmy has come back and said, thank you, baby's back to her birth weight, lots of dirty and wet nappies. That's brilliant. I've had help with the latch and been told it's fine. I just don't know why she won't stop feeding overnight. I think we talked about talking to OBS. Just get them to have another look as well. I know it sounds mad, you've had loads of people looking, but they might be able to improve it even a tiny bit more, and then see how you get on.
It's hard, isn't it, when they're awake all night, and some babies are for a few weeks, and then they start to realise the clock's the wrong way around, and they tend to settle.
My daughter, who can party all night through and will climb into bed at 8 a.m. in the morning when she's allowed to. These days you're not allowed to. She was the baby that would never go to bed. She would never, ever close her eyes before about 2 a.m. So I feel your pain, because I remember what it's like when all you want to do is go to sleep, and especially as I had an older daughter as well, who was going to be up at 6, and this one wouldn't go to sleep till 2. So I
think you've got to learn to sleep in the day. You've got to teach yourself to take your clothes off and get into bed, close the curtains, turn your phone off, and have a proper sleep. Get somebody to babysit for an hour so you can have a really good sleep, and then you sleep for very long. So you've got to be able to work around the clock and just say, well, nights and days aren't of any sequence now, and this is what it is for the time being. And deal with, you haven't got many visitors coming, you haven't got many places to go, so sleep round the clock until you can get that clock sorted out, and that might well allow you to cope with it a little bit better if you're not so exhausted. But it is really hard. We know it's really hard, and these babies do that, and it's very tiring.
I'm very aware that we have got about another 5 questions, and it's already 37 minutes past, so we need to crack on. We've got to go off and do the things as well. So and you're probably losing patience with us as well. Laurie Betty has said, hi there, my baby's 5 weeks old and still gulps air when feeding. She had her tongue tie released and still gulps the air. Have a quick letdown. Will she be able to manage feeding better?
Maybe you need to get a bit of help with your positioning. It might be that the palate's a little bit high from, not just having a tongue tie, but actually the shape of the mouth. And it might be that you need to put the nipple a bit higher into the baby's mouth to get a better vacuum, which will stop the gulping. Something called the flipple. I don't know if anyone's helped you with that, or whether you've been to see OBS or your health visitors, but it might be worth having another conversation with somebody about your positioning. Just having a tongue tie cut does not always make it better. You've got to get your positioning right, and sometimes as your baby grows you need to adjust it. So seek help, because it doesn't have to be like that. Hopefully you can improve the latch. Crying and you're changing the nappy, you can see that it goes up quite a way into the roof of the mouth, and you've got to deal with that. That doesn't change even when you've had a tongue tie cut, so you've got to work with what your baby's born with. So see if you can get some help with positioning, just to see if they can help with that, to just get a better vacuum when the baby's transferring milk, and that might help the air gulping.
Okay, Sarah has said, when you say about hand expressing and feeding the colostrum, would you have them skin to skin but feed them from the syringe you collect it in, or would it be them taking it straight from you whilst you're hand expressing? It could be either.
Doesn't matter.
Having them skin to skin is perfect though, whichever way you do it. So you could have your baby and just be expressing straight into their mouth if they let you, or you could be collecting it and give it to them because they're fast asleep. So whichever way you want to go about it will work. We
you can do both.
And a mixture thereof, sometimes straight into a syringe or sometimes straight into the baby. Whatever way you can.
If your baby's lapping at the breast and licking and smacking its lips and learning to breastfeed, you can hand express into its mouth. It's getting calories when you're doing it and practicing attachment. So that's a great way to do it as well, and it's perfect.
Alexander has written, hello, my baby's 16 weeks old and exclusively breastfed. He's a very good weight. He's suffering from constipation. The GPs are a little baffled as this is apparently unusual in breastfed babies. I've increased his fluids, only have non-dairy milk in my diet and given him a small amount of water. Any advice greatly appreciated. It is unusual because breast milk is pretty laxative really. So it is quite unusual.
Is it constipation?
Yeah, is it definitely constipation?
Or is it that your baby only goes once a week because he's breastfed? Is he having very hard stools when he poos? Are they very formed and very hard, or is he having poo normally once a week? Because if that's the case, it's probably the way your baby's bowels are with breast milk, and if it's a normal stool that comes out when he does one, then that's not constipated.
Absolutely.
So just make sure that it is the right thing, and that if obviously if they're very very formed stools, very hard, and he's struggling to poo when you can see it there, then that probably is constipation. But just make sure that it is constipation and not just that your baby doesn't poo as often as some babies, which is not unusual in a breastfed baby at that age.
Yeah, because we know that up to 6 weeks we'd expect a baby to poo twice a day, usually, £2 coin yellow stool, that's what we're expecting minimum. But from 6 weeks onwards we know that can really space out with a breastfed baby. Very little waste products in breast milk as well, if you think about it. So it, as Naomi says, if it's like a normal poo and it's just taking time, then that's not constipation. So see how you're getting on. Obviously, that's a conversation you can have with us or any of the other organisations around. Amy's come back and said thank you. Jessica, we already said that baby was getting a bit more unsettled. She had already noticed that one. Jessica's baby has gone from 8.3 to 12.9.
Wow.
She's grown lots. Well done you. Hannah has come back and said thank you. Charlotte has put another post up about her Alicia, what she told us now. Starting to roll over and sit up.
Oh, watch out.
Wow, loving her food. Oh,
don't put her on the bed.
She's trying to get her to eat finger food. Rose has said thank you. Laurie Betts said thank you as well. And Sarah Dye said thank you. I think we're there. It was me thinking we had loads left. It was all thank yous. So I think it's our turn to thank you.
Yeah, thank you for listening. And we love your questions, so please tune in same time next week, I think, isn't it?
I think so. And obviously a couple of you we suggested get in touch, so please do get in touch because we can't reach you. I have once been concerned about someone and tried to trace them through Facebook and contact them, but it didn't work. So if we've said get in touch with us and you want to, please do so. Please give us a call or email us or whatever. Okay, thank you very much.
So I think we'll see you all next week with lots more questions. Okay. Please keep coming. All right, thanks for watching.
Thank you very much.
Bye from us.